day one of leaking top insider stock trades every day until they stop us. We are looking for the high signal, abnormal, unusual insider trades that could help us know whether a stock is going to go up or down. So let's take a look first at the charts here. We're looking at the filings from August 28th for this video. We see a slight uptick in purchases, though, flat to maybe a little down over the last month or so. Sales also pretty normal. In terms of the percent of trades that are insider buys, very average day. We can look at a little bit longer of a time frame, and it looks like for the week we're coming in about average in terms of the percent of trades that are buys. Nothing really looks too unusual here. The number of purchases for the week, we still have a day left of filing, so that'll catch up a little bit. Nothing too crazy here. I do think we're going to come in a little low in terms of the value. As we can see, the last few days there's been not a super unusual number of insider trades, but the value of them has not been very high. So we're probably a little lower on the value of the insider buying going on. Overall, I don't think it's too crazy of a week. The weeks get crazy when you start to see weeks like way down here, which this is typically happening during earnings season. So really, if it was way down here and not during earnings, that'd be interesting. Or, when we have huge months or huge quarters in terms of how much buying is going on, then it gets interesting. But we got a pretty normal setup right now. Just a reminder, we're looking for the unscheduled and the abnormal insider trades. Bonus points if the insiders have a history of success, if the trades are particularly large, or we have a lot of people making the trade. And then, maybe the price action could be interesting if they're buying the dip or selling the rip or something like that. Let's head over to CEOWatcher.com and just go through a few of the largest purchases and sales. We will start with the largest purchases. Set the filing date, set the purchase size. I like when the insider returns are a little longer, so I'll go 6-month bullish only insider returns because I only want to know what their returns were when they bought the stock before. And then we're going to sort by transaction value. Quickly, let's just take a look at the tickers we have here. Right off the bat, we noticed TPVG, Triple Point Venture Group, which, as you can see, if I just do a quick hover here, a lot of insider buying going on recently at Triple Point Venture Group. So we already know right off the bat that's going to be interesting. Eastman Chemical, a ton of Eastman Chemical buyers. Let's see what the chart looks like. So a ton of Eastman Chemical buyers. And the only time they've ever bought, lots of selling in the past, no buying at all. $1.83 million bought by insiders after a 30%-ish decline in the last 6 months. That's another one that's probably going to be interesting. Open Door Technology. Retail investors are going to love this one. Obviously, it's been a bit of a meme stock here recently. So the interim CEO picking up $128,000 for the stock. Not very much, but interesting for it's probably a good move, just a good use of $100,000. Might get some of the media and the retail investors to get a little hyped about it. So let's just start at the top here. Pretty good returns here for Global GP LLC, which I have to assume Global Partners and Global GP are related. A lot of buying here. I don't know if the timing looks particularly good. They do apparently have pretty good 6-month returns on their purchasing. So stock does tend to go up about, what would this be, 75% of the time it goes up, a little less, probably 67% of the time or something. It goes up a pretty good amount over the next 6 months and over the next year, really. So, it doesn't look like they're not like, it's not the best timing ever, right? Or else they'd be buying just, only in these dips. Pretty good history of buying. Let's just go see if anybody else is buying at GLP. What do we got here? So we have some insider selling kind of sporadically thrown in, though those are for 10b5-1 plans, as we can see. Which makes them a little less interesting. I don't think anything material is going to happen here. There's not going to be any huge, probably spikes anytime in the near future. I don't know, maybe an okay long-term play if you're interested in looking at it. The only real thing interesting here is just that this Global GP LLC does tend to have pretty good historic returns across all time frames, which really just that in and of itself is enough to probably be worth a look. The Triple Point Venture Group, we have seen this stock pop up now quite a few times, and for good reason. If we look over the history of the stock, very little trading at all, literally no selling. So it's only been buying. The buys haven't been perfect. They got the COVID dip over here that worked out pretty well. They do seem to buy most of the dips, buying a dip, buying a dip, buying a dip. Problem is the stock just kind of keeps going down, especially over the last couple of years. It's been pretty choppy, pretty down. However, what makes this interesting is the amount of buying we have going on here. So if I move this a little longer, we've got almost $5 million of buys in August alone, and in Q3, but really it's all in August, which is what is this? The most before was 250,000. So 20 times more buying than any previous quarter automatically makes it interesting. On top of that, we have the CEO here who just himself only has one previous purchase, I guess. So not enough history to really be very confident. But the stock did go up 25% in the next 3 months after that purchase. It went up 35% in the next 6 months and 40% in the next year. So his one previous purchase, he did nail. And these purchases are way larger. I mean, that was only a $2,000 purchase. So I don't really know what was going on there, but not actually very interesting. He was buying shares for his children, it seems like, which I don't know if they're buying shares for your children, it might be a pretty good sign. In this case, it doesn't look like any specific reason why he's buying right now. 100% worth a look, in my opinion, with all of this buying. The stock itself doesn't seem like it moves all that much, but that huge influx of buying going on is certainly interesting. Eastman Chemical, another one that looked pretty interesting because we just saw all of these. Look how many people here are purchasing. We've got 10 insiders purchasing the stock. Some of them pretty sizable too. 100% increase here. 1,000% increase, 47% increase. So these are sizable purchases at a company where there's almost literally never been purchasing before, except for one way back there, it looks like. Plenty of selling. So we've got insiders flipping from selling to buying. It's unscheduled. There's not even any footnotes. So if we go look at there's literally nothing. It's just straight buying going on without any explanations. The stock is down 30% in the last year. It's probably unlikely. I mean, this company is so big and it's a chemical company, unlikely to have a huge spike. We saw this at Eli Lilly. We saw this at United Healthcare. Insiders getting together, buying the dip, and buying the dip in size is certainly notable. And certainly worth taking a look, especially if that's a type of company or an industry that you would be interested in looking at. We'll do a couple more here. We've got Arrow Financial. Let's see who's buying here. 155% increase in holdings is automatically interesting. The CFO, which, there's been research before saying that the CFOs are the highest signal insiders. Not the most compelling research in my opinion, but it is there. Looking at the history for this person, they have pretty good returns on their buys. Looks like they've only bought before. Pretty good returns. However, their win rate is pretty bad, which let's go look at why that might be. They must have nailed one or two purchases, which it looks like they would have been at this other company where before they were the CFO at a different company. So they lost money on some of these purchases, but then, this one made them a ton of money when they bought right at the COVID dip. So they're kind of bolstered up by the COVID dip. All of these lost money too. The only time they made money were on the COVID dip. So the average returns to me are a little skewed there. They don't quite tell you the full story because it was really just one time frame where the trade made sense. However, by far the biggest purchase ever. The second biggest one was just on August 8th, which was it looks like it was part of a stock purchase plan acquired under the dividend reinvestment and the stock purchase plan. But now even a 10x bigger holding than that. So huge purchase makes it interesting. The insider returns make it interesting, but because he doesn't have a big history of insider returns, I don't know if it's the most interesting to me. Let's take a look maybe at one more. Let's take a look here. The CEO buying Braemar Hotels and Resorts after the stock has popped up a little bit here in the last couple months. Still down slightly. Pretty volatile stock here. His history of buying is okay, I guess, over the 1 year time frame. So look at this. Bought the COVID dip, nailed that. And then looks like in August 2023, bought quite a few times. So I would say, and then he's sold on the way up here. He's a little early on the sale in in December of 2020, but then kind of nailed the top in 2021. I would say this guy has a pretty decent history of buying, even though the purchases don't seem to reflect that on the returns here, which over the longer time frame though, they do seem to have gone up quite a bit. 100% hit rate with 28% 1 year returns is interesting. Let's see how the size of this purchase, 125,000, makes it his his largest purchase ever. This one was a sale, so largest purchase ever. Pretty good history in my opinion. Nobody else is buying, which, you'd like to see some other insiders getting in on the buying. Overall, I think that's a pretty interesting trade. A pretty interesting purchase. I think that's definitely one taking a look deeper into. Now we're going to flip over to sales. And we're going to flip this to bearish only so that we only see insider returns for sales. And then we'll just flip this over from buy to sell. And let's see what we've got here. We've got a huge sale at Datadog, $87 million sale by a director at Datadog. CoreWeave, this is just going to be more selling because of their lockup expiring. Tesla, the insiders at Tesla have been selling for quite a while now as part of 10b5-1 plans, not particularly unusual. Deutsche Telekom has also been selling. T-Mobile forever. SkyWater Technologies, this has become a fairly popular stock. Executive has pretty good returns. Well, let me just start up here first. Let's start with this director at CoreWeave, or not CoreWeave, at Datadog. Anytime you see positive returns, meaning for a sale, a positive return means the stock went down. So the insider timed the sale well. Let's just see what it looks like. So now when you pull out the chart, it doesn't really, you can kind of get a better picture. Maybe a well-timed sale back here. Some pretty close to the bottom buying down here, even though it took a while for that to work out. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, the stock took a year and the stock was only up 5%. Historically, the stock's gone down 12% after the sales. If you look, it's also because he's been at some other companies, so he probably was better at selling some of these, would be my guess. Let's see. Braze in 2022. This purchase is certainly going to hurt. So he didn't do any selling here. Looks like a bunch of purchases, and this is why his purchase returns are not very good. So overall, I would say, let's see any of his other sales. He sold Datadog back here, which we already saw. He sold GitLab in 2024. Okay timing. I don't think the timing's anything particularly crazy. Though, if we just, I bet this is his largest trade ever. $87 million. Yeah, $87 million, largest sale ever by, 3x almost. So definitely a huge sale. He also sold just a couple of days ago. This other recent sale was also his. So we've got, $100 million in selling by a single director at a company. To me, just that by itself is enough. If I was looking at stocks in this industry, I'd probably just find that there's so many tech stocks that you could, that'll get you similar exposure, that if I see that kind of insider selling, I just find a different one. But I don't think it's too crazy. Taking a look at SkyWater Technologies, like I mentioned, which one thing you can do is we can come over here. I already searched for it, but you can search for the ticker at joinyellowbrick.com, and it'll show you any recent stock pitches from anybody. This one looks like it was on Twitter for a SkyWater Technology pitch, a pure play Silicon Foundry. Looks like at this time it was pitched for quantum computing stuff, but they have DoD funding. They also, I've now recently seen them more talked about for some of the drone and counter drone technology stuff that the United States government is going after. You can read it a couple ways. One, I'm always nervous in an industry that could pick up a ton of heat. Trying to time those sales can be pretty tough, especially if you're trying to short it, that's probably a bad idea. But on the flip side, you could also argue if they had a big deal coming, the insider's probably not going to sell. So this might be one of those ones where if you were trying to play some counter drone defense type of technology play, maybe just look at some of the other stocks in that field. Probably will get you a better upside than this one. That's kind of how I would read this one. I don't think it's the biggest. It's not the highest signal sale. This person sells all the time. The returns, it looks like the returns end up working out okay, especially over the longer terms. Frankly, I mean, a lot of that's going to be because of these two sales over here, because of this sale. They don't actually nail the win rate all that much just by looking at the chart. This is their largest sale ever, as you can see by the red dot, makes it a little more interesting. So again, like I said, this is probably more to me just like if I want exposure in this space, I might go look at a different stock. What else do we have here? Continued selling at Power Solutions International. We've talked about this one quite a bit. No selling before in the history of this company, and then all of a sudden you have a ton of insiders, which actually I need to look at this chart. You have a ton of insiders selling the stock after its massive 150% run up. Another one to me, there's a lot of stocks in that similar industry that are going to get you similar exposure. Like, why go for the one that has a ton of insider selling? Klaviyo, another pretty semi-popular stock just by nature of it being a tech stock, but we've got the executive selling the stock, or the CEO selling the stock, which you never really like to see. And we've also had a few other insiders selling. However, insiders are always selling, which is kind of typically the case at these big companies. And it's part of a 10b5-1 plan. You have Summit Partners making some bigger sales, which would be these big red lines are going to be Summit Partner sales. I don't think there's anything particularly crazy to look at here. Though you could go, I do know we have a few write-ups on joinyellowbrick.com for Klaviyo, so you can kind of see both sides of the story, because we've got Sands Capital Technology owns the stock. Business Invest looked it up and just did an overview, which it looks like they didn't end up investing in. And then you got a short report by the captain's log, so you could go quickly read up and kind of take your pick on which side you believe there. I don't think these sales specifically are a huge concern. And we can look at maybe one or two more. Cipher Mining, this is one of those ones where like insiders are selling the stock quite a bit, but you are playing in dangerous territory just because of the kind of meme stock status of this company and the amount of popularity it has right now by being in this, it's called a mining company, but in more like, crypto mining. So that's always going to be a tough play. The insiders do tend to time the tops okay. At least they were selling up here, though they were also selling down here. So gives you some pause. They were selling up here and then stopped at the dip and then started selling again as it started coming back up. This selling to me is kind of interesting. We had you got 4 insiders selling the stock, and we've also have the most selling we've ever seen in this quarter already, 50 million almost, which is more than any of these other quarters. So definitely bearish in my opinion. The main thing to me is just like trying to be bearish on some of those, not really meme industries, but kind of a meme industry. Is just a tough game to play. What else can we look at here? Let's just look at John Ingle at Wesco, the CEO selling you never like to see. The CEO selling at the very top you never like to see. The CEO who has previously sold at some peaks, it looks like. Not this one though. So they kind of sold at the peaks. You also never like to see in terms of sizing. Let's go see if anybody else sold, or if this was a particularly large sale. 3, 4, 5 insiders selling. 5 insiders selling at the peak you never like to see. So we've got another case of by far the most amount of insider selling that's gone on in at least 2 years. In terms of the amount of holdings they're selling, it's not crazy amounts. The dollar amounts though, $11.5 million for the CEO here, certainly notable, almost certainly his largest sale ever, I would bet. I guess not by that much. Last time he sold was in 2023. He sold $10 million and the stock, he timed that sale pretty well. Yeah, so to me, this is one where, either worth looking at from the short side or just, kind of avoiding the stock if you don't want it. But I think this is probably enough signal you could even look, if you were interested in shorting, you could even look at adding it there. But obviously, you should know what you're doing if you're going to short the stock. Let's just look at one more here, because we got Honeywell, who, the CEO of IA, which is industrial automation at Honeywell, selling the stock. First ever sale while at Honeywell, largest sale ever from any stock. It looks like he was at Eastman Chemical before and sold stock there on the way up. Maybe not the greatest timing you've ever seen, especially down here, but did nail the top there over the longer term. The stock has gone down, about 5% on average, which when you got the stock market going up 10% or whatever it might be, it's a pretty big underperformance. So the history here is okay by them. Largest sale ever is interesting. Okay history, not the best history. Guess we can just take a quick look here. Looks like he's converting stock options to sell, which is always a good thing to look at, because if these expiration dates were coming up, then he could just be a forced seller, right? Like you have to get rid of them because they're about to expire. That is certainly not the case. And then in terms of exercising, the first one doesn't exercise until October 3rd of next year. While he is exchanging stock and selling them, he doesn't have to. So he is deciding to make these sales. So this is another one where it's at least interesting enough that if you were looking to short, you could probably start doing some more research. And if you were going to buy something in this space, in the industrial space, I'd probably just look elsewhere, right? Why try to fight the president of automotive selling the stock? You can find all the top insider trades at CEOWatcher.com, and don't forget to like and subscribe.